Chapter 1. Understanding International Relations and Nations, Nationalism and States. What is nation? The term nation is derived from the Latin word natio. Natio means birth or blood relationship and, by implication, nation means common origin, or the people who have common ancestors. Barker. A nation is a body of persons inhabiting a definite territory, and thus united together by the primary fact of living together on a common land. Various criteria and characteristics that are unique to each nation include language, tradition, ethnicity, religion, myths, beliefs, symbols, and blood ties. For nationalists, various criteria and characteristics that are unique to each nation include language, tradition, ethnicity, religion, myths, beliefs, symbols, and blood ties. The combination of such features plus economics and sharing a homeland equals strong bond of people. Collective consciousness, or group identity, can be reinforced by shared experiences like war, famine, indicating that the nation is a lasting community of people with a sense of a shared past and a shared future. Meaning of nationalism. It is a kind of political consciousness of belonging to a group. It is a force holding together a community in a defined territory, maintaining their rights against aggression from outside. At the heart of nationalism is the idea that nations are distinct entities, and that this being so, each nation should have self-determination. Self-determination is the principle that nations should be able to form their own states. Michael Ignatieff expanded on this definition by noting that, as a political doctrine, nationalism is the belief that the world's peoples are divided into nations, and that each of these nations has the right to self-determination, either as governing units within nations or as nation-states of their own. As a cultural ideal, nationalism is the claim that while men and women have many identities, it is the nation that provides them with their primary form of belonging. As a moral ideal, nationalism is an ethic of heroic sacrifice, justifying the use of violence in the defense of one's nation against enemies, internal or external. Ignatieff, 1994. At the Versailles Conference following the First World War, U.S. President Woodrow Wilson called for self-determination as a means of promoting peace, collective security, and higher order. Nationalism contributed to the reunification of Italy in 1861 and Germany in 1871, as well as to the breakup of Austria-Hungary in 1918. Nationalism is a psychopolitical concept. It is spiritual cord unsling a nation. Psychologically, it is love and pride in the cultural heritage, customs, traditions, institutions, and all other aspects of one's society, and politically, nationalism centers round nation-state, loyalty to the state by each and every person. Main types of nationalism. Civic nationalism, a social contract between citizens and the state. Ethnic nationalism, often involving a strong hereditary principle. Cultural nationalism, the nation is bonded together through a sense of shared culture. Liberal nationalism, nationalism based upon the principles of equality, freedom, tolerance, individual rights and identity. Pan-nationalism, form of ethnic and cultural nationalism, in which various groups in different states share similar features or characteristics. Diaspora nationalism, national grouping of expatriates who live outside their homeland or home state. Important features of nationalism. 1. It is a feeling. 2. Nationalism translates into patriotic action. 3. Nationalism leads to self-determination. 4. Nationalism usually stems from homogeneity. 5. Nationalism can override heterogeneity. State definitions and nature. Many scholars have defined state in various ways. Aristotle, 4th CBC, who is regarded as father of political science, had defined state as a union of families and villages having for its end a perfect and self-sufficing life, happy and honorable life. Dr. J. W. Garner, as a concept of political science, the state is a community of persons more or less numerous, permanently occupying a definite portion of territory, independent, or nearly so, of external control, and possessing an organized government to which the great body of inhabitants render habitual obedience. Professor Harold Lasky, the state is a territorial society divided into government and subjects claiming within its allotted physical area a supremacy over all other institutions. By analyzing the two definitions, we can identify 4 elements which are essential to make a state. These are I. Population, the second, territory, 3. Government, and 4. Sovereignty. Throughout history, states have existed in many forms, from the city-states of ancient Greece to the feudal states of the medieval period to the modern system of states in place today. It is claimed by many scholars, such as Hans J. Morgenthau and Henry Kissinger, that the modern system of states originates from the Peace of Westphalia in 1648. A number of important principles emerged from the Westphalian settlement, such as territoriality, secularism, and reciprocal recognition. The Peace of Westphalia also codified an important feature of statehood, namely sovereignty. The nature and evolution of international relations. International relations is a product of its history. Even though IR is a relatively new subject, the problems it deals with are as old as human civilization. Some of our earliest texts deal with war and diplomacy. Amarna letters found on clay tablets in Egypt and normally dated to the 14th century BC, record correspondence between the Egyptian pharaoh and rulers of other kingdoms and territories around the eastern Mediterranean and Near East. The history of the Peloponnesian War, The Art of War by the 6th century BC Chinese writer Sun Tzu. In these early days of human civilization, however, it wasn't possible to speak about truly global relationships. Brown, in his book, Understanding International Relations, 1995, notes that such relations transcend the political and governmental. Such non-state actors include IGOs, INGOs, non-governmental organizations, NGOs, and transnational companies, TNCs, or multinational corporations, MNCs, which are not necessarily political in nature. The study of IR as a separate academic discipline is a recent phenomenon. The first academic department studying IR was set up in the University of Wales at Aberystwyth in 1919. Definition of IR. For some, international relations means the diplomatic, strategic relations of states, and the characteristic focus of IR is on issues of war and peace, conflict and cooperation. Others see international relations as being about cross-border transactions of all kinds, political, economic and social, and IR is as likely to study trade negotiations, or the operation of non-state institutions, such as Amnesty International, as it is conventional peace talks or the workings of the United Nations, UN. As a situation, IR describes the state of As a situation, IR describes the state of interaction between two or more actors in separate national boundaries. These include all or any aspects of their relationship such as war, conflict, dispute, separation, belligerency, settlement, pact, treaties, cooperation, conferences, etc. As a principle, IR refers to a set of ideas that constitute the public policy that a state makes for the purpose of the external context. It describes the foreign policy of a state, international organization, or region, which are articulated, formulated, and implemented by an international department, or a State Department, or Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Actors of international relations. An actor is a person who have a leading role, or one that takes part in a given affair. An actor is any individual or political entity which has enough authority and power and has a will to exercise its power influence political processes. Actors are element of IR, and the composition of which constitutes the international system. As per Professor Ryo Asaba of Hitotsubashi University, actors can be defined as entities which have the following three features. 1. They should have overall capacity to decide on their purposes and interests. 2. They should also have the capability to mobilize necessary resources to achieve these purposes and interests and be passionate about appealing for global cooperation. 3. Their actions should be significant enough to influence the state-to-state relations or the behavior of other non-state actors in the global system. State actors. Non-state actors. 1. International governmental organizations, IGOs, are institutions with members drawn from two or more sovereign countries. IGOs can be classified into three categories according to their roles. Function, general purpose, and specialized purpose. Geographic scope, global and limited. Alliances. Some alliances are merely treaties, but a few have organizational structure. For instance, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, is one. Alliances could be formed from desire to dominate others, or to protect its members from specific threat. 2. International non-governmental organizations, INGO. 3. Non-governmental organizations. 4. Multinational enterprises. 5. Individuals. Power and sovereignty in the international system. Power, the ability/capacity to do something. Power in international relations can be defined as the ability of one state to exert influence or control over the actions of other states. Joseph Nye splits power into two forms, hard power and soft power. Sovereignty. The English term, sovereignty, which permeates the language of law and politics, is derived from the French term souverain, who is ascertained to be a supreme ruler not accountable to anyone, except perhaps to God. Sovereignty is the full right and power of a governing body over itself, without any interference from outside sources or bodies. De jure sovereignty refers to the legal right to do so. De facto sovereignty refers to the factual ability to do so. Sovereignty is expressed as internal sovereignty and external sovereignty. Internal sovereignty refers to the internal affairs of the state and the location of supreme power within it. External sovereignty relates to two factors. The first is that of recognition. States formally recognize each other through diplomatic means and by international treaties. Recognition is an acknowledgement of the existence of states in international politics by other states. The second factor relating to external sovereignty is that of legal equality. Anarchy. In international relations theory, anarchy is the idea that the world lacks any supreme authority or sovereign. In an anarchic state, there is no hierarchically superior, coercive power that can resolve disputes. The idea of anarchy as absence of central government or state derives from the concept of a state of nature, developed by the 17th century philosopher Thomas Hobbes in The Elements of Law, 1650, and refined in Leviathan, 1651. The state of nature is a hypothetical condition of statelessness. International anarchy, in effect, can refer to 1. The absence of world government, 2. International disorder, or 3. International order. The first and the third senses of anarchy are central to IR. Anarchy, so interpreted, is a horizontal arrangement between formal equals to be distinguished from hierarchy, a vertical arrangement between subordinate and superordinate units. The structure of international system. In studies of international politics, the conception of system has been used mainly in two ways: international system and world systems. International system is a concept for analysis or description of international politics or relations, but therein lies a sense of prescription for diplomatic or military action too. Morton Kaplan has developed the most elaborate discussion on international system. He does not define international systems in particular, but describes the state of an international system or of its subsystems. Variables. The essential rules of the system. The transformation rules. The actor classificatory variables. Capabilities variables and the information variables. Utilizing the 5 variables, he specifies 6 international systems: A. The balance of power system. B. The loose bipolar system. C. The tight bipolar system. D. The universal system. E. The hierarchical system in its directive and non-directive forms. And F. The unit veto system. While the first two have historical counterparts, the modern Western world politics, and the Cold War, the rest are heuristic models, having no foundation in history. The third corresponds to the most extreme case of direct confrontation between the East and the West in the Cold War. The fourth system is judged to be the would-be World Confederation of the States. The fifth, the assumed world state, authoritarian or democratic, with concentration of all the authorities in the center. The sixth international system is a hypothetical case when all nations have gone nuclear. Unit 2. Theories of IR. International relations theory is the study of international relations, IR, from a theoretical perspective. It attempts to provide a conceptual framework upon which international relations can be analyzed. Holsti describes international relations theories as acting like pairs of colored sunglasses that allow the wearer to see only salient events relevant to the theory. The study of international relations, as theory, can be traced to E.H. Carr's The 20 Years Crisis, which was published in 1939, and to Hans Morgenthau's Politics Among Nations, published in 1948. Realism. Realism, or political realism, has been the dominant theory of IR since the conception of the discipline. The theory claims to rely upon an ancient tradition of thought which includes writers such as Thucydides, Machiavelli, and Hobbes. A reaction against interwar idealist thinking. The outbreak of World War II was seen by realists as evidence of the deficiencies of idealist thinking. The main tenets of the theory have been identified as statism, survival, and self-help. Statism. Nation-states are the main actors in IR, i.e. state-centric. Survival. The international system is governed by anarchy. Therefore, international politics is a struggle for power between self-interested states. Self-help. No other states can be relied upon to help guarantee the state's survival. Conted. Key assumptions. Nation-states are unitary, geographically based actors in an anarchic international system. No true authoritative world government exists. States are the primary actors in international affairs. Thus, states, as the highest order, are in competition with one another. A state acts as a rational autonomous actor in pursuit of its own self-interest with a primary goal to maintain and ensure its own security, and thus its sovereignty and survival. Relations between states are determined by their relative levels of power. Liberalism/idealism/utopianism. Also called Wilsonianism because of its association with Woodrow Wilson. It is a school of thought that holds that a state should make its internal political philosophy the goal of its foreign policy. Liberalism holds that state preferences, rather than state capabilities, are the primary determinant of state behavior. Unlike realism, where the state is seen as a unitary actor, liberalism allows for plurality in state actions. Thus, preferences will vary from state to state, depending on factors such as culture, economic system, or government type. Liberalism also holds that interaction between states is not limited to the political/security, high politics, but also economic/cultural, low politics, whether through commercial firms, organizations, or individuals.